Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. So Ivan Rucker and I, we are here for the joint Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration federally required certification review for the Hampton Roads region, and that's conducted for Hampton Roads TPO. Thank you for being here. Okay, great. Sorry, this is a joint presentation for the public meeting we're having later tonight, but this is the planning area of Hampton Roads TPO. Introduction of the team. My name is Chelsea Batas. I'm with FTA Region 3, based in Philadelphia. FTA Region 3 serves transit agencies, metropolitan planning organizations, and state DOTs in Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and DC. And I work a lot with the MPOs. I do a little bit of grants, and then for transit projects, helping to coordinate the environmental review process with the region's environmental protection specialists.
I am Ivan Rucker. I'm the statewide planner and freight program manager for the Federal Highway Administration. We work out of the Virginia Division Office. Federal Highway is structured a little bit differently than our federal transit counterparts. They're regionally. Federal Highway has footprints in every state, especially every state capital. Our division office is located in Richmond, Virginia, and our primary responsibilities, shall I say, my primary responsibility is to work with the states and the MPOs to advance transportation solutions for not just the region, but also for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Glad to be here.
Later we'll have other members from the Federal Highways team. Prior to our site visit, we conducted a thorough desk review of the planning documents that the MPO has, as well with other questions on the planning process. Following the site visit, the federal team, we will issue a certification report that will document our findings from the desk review from the site visit sessions that we had earlier today that we'll have in the afternoon and then tomorrow, as well as input that we've received through this CAC meeting, as well as interactions with the public meeting that will be later tonight. In that report, we'll have 3 different types of federal findings. Some will be they can be accommodation, which is something that the region does well and as a precedent for other MPOs to follow. Others, the other type of findings are recommendations, and those are items that could be improved upon related to the transportation planning process and products. And then the last is corrective action, which are items to be addressed in a formal manner. Okay, so why are we here? I mentioned earlier, this is a requirement for the federal team to come to review the metropolitan planning organization.
I'm so sorry.
Planning products, processes, it's conducted once every 4 years. The time frame that we have is a 9-month process from when we start the process, reaching out to the MPO until the issuing of a final report and decision to recertify, typically, and that's expected, of the MPO. And so the deadline for recertification this year for Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization is November 20th. And this is required because Hampton Roads, mainly looking at the Hampton Roads plans for Virginia Beach, Virginia, and that urbanized area has a population more than 200,000. Here's a visual of what the review process looks like. Earlier, Ivan and I, we worked on preparing for the certification review, and take, I guess, interactions that we've had over the last 4 years, starting from the last approval of the transportation planning process. We went through our desk review of the documents and processes, and now we're here for on-site. Later we'll have the public involvement and there's an additional opportunity to get input from those that are involved in guiding the transportation planning process and outcomes in the region. And later, as I mentioned, is the certification report and then recertification letter. Mentioned those a bit earlier. And theoretically, the certification actions, there is certified with conditions. Some of those could be corrective actions, and then there could be the situation that a region is not certified, but to my knowledge, that has not happened in the three states, in the states that FTA Region 3 provides oversight to. So what is the planning process for an area? Oh, sorry. So it should align in a 3C manner that is continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive, where decisions are made and projects are planned, selected, prioritized, and then for implementation in the region. So how does it work with the 3C process? So continuing would be to update or reoccur frequency with a specific cycle. Cooperative involves the different transportation planning agencies coming together with the MPO, the transit agencies, and the state DOT. And comprehensive is making sure to get the full breadth of considerations and requirements that go into the process. So why the process is important, it ultimately determines what projects will be chosen to move forward, and with those projects, the related funding. And as funding is limited, that's up to the process moving forward to make that, determine the prioritization factors and ultimately choose which projects will forward, and these projects then set the framework for the future transportation infrastructure and network. Agencies that are involved in this process for transportation planning is it comes to the MPO, their board and committees. And then related to the state DOT, we have Virginia Department of Transportation, the Virginia Department of Rails and Public Transportation for the transit side, transit operators of local jurisdictions or municipalities that are being served by the MPO. There's the federal team, which is more oversight and compliance, and that will also include highways, Federal Transit Administration, US EPA as it relates to air quality review and conformity, other resource agencies, local citizens, and interest groups. The federally required planning products are the Unified Planning Work Program, Congestion Management Process, Long Range Transportation Plan, Transportation Improvement Program, and the Public Participation Plan, as well as Title VI Program, Limited English Proficiency Plan. How the products fit together. So the Unified Planning Work Program outlines the work that the MPO will conduct during that year. that will go towards a long-range vision, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan or Long-Range Transportation Plan. And that's at least a 20-year outlook of transportation investments and projects. And then translating that to the transportation projects is done through the projects and funding that's programmed on the Transportation Improvement Program. And that plans for the next 4 years. Now we have the opportunity for public input, and this would be the public input through the Community Advisory Committee. Mentioned earlier, this is a federal requirement as part of the certification review to get input from those who are involved in the transportation planning decision-making, as well as those from the general public as well. So we do welcome comments. Related to the planning process as it moves with the MPO and related state DOT and transit operators on how this process is conducted. What will happen to your comments? So they will help to determine the effectiveness of the transportation planning process in the region. They will be used to guide the report that the federal team writes, and then any potential findings that the federal team has. And we do allow submission of comments beyond what is collected from this meeting and the public meeting. So if you want to follow up with Ivan and me, you can directly, and we will incorporate comments that are received to us for this report, for this certification review, if they're received by September 10th. Okay. So the questions that we have are outlined in the meeting, and those questions will dictate, or not dictate, but the discussions will happen among those questions. My part of the presentation, I believe those, okay, and those questions can be found at the last page of the agenda for today's meeting.
Chelsea, before we begin with the questions, do you mind if I just address a point of order with FOIA so that
Yes, please do. There's also I think everyone's done a sign-in sheet, so thank you for doing that. And okay, we'll get the sign-in sheet. We also want to include members who are joining virtually. We'll note those as well. And do you want to, anything to add?
Well, I would just add this. In terms of citizen advisory committees or public committees that are advising, in this case, MPO or MPOs around the country, they are not statutorily required for transportation management areas, large areas. However, we see them as certainly adding value to the planning process. And one of the things we expect when you have a citizen transportation advisory committee or community advisory committee is that that committee serves as a connection to the communities in which, or the jurisdictions in which you represent. So the expectation is that beyond the walls of this organization, this building, you all are having a conversation with your neighbors, your friends, about what's working with respect to transportation infrastructure and what's not working with respect to transportation infrastructure.
The second one is the one that everybody likes.
Okay, yeah, right. And you're able to freely bring those to the table and then track how your advisory board, a very important advisory, how the information that is obtained at your level is addressed at the decision-making level, meaning the MPO policy board, and making sure that your voice is being heard. So again, from a CAC standpoint, there's certain benefits to having a community advisory committee. And just want to say thank you for taking the time to show up, including those individuals who may be joining us virtually. As Chelsea has said, the regulation, the statute is that when we conduct a certification review, we are statutorily required to engage the public. More importantly, we are statutorily required to consider the comments that we receive from the public, including the CAC, in arriving at a certification action. So it's important that in terms of the discussion today, that you share your thoughts and opinions so that we can accurately and appropriately capture those with respect to not just your thoughts, your opinions, but the opinions of the communities that you represent. All right? Thank you.
Just a couple housekeeping items for our virtual attendees. If you haven't already, please go ahead and put your name, your email, whether or not you're a member of the CAC, public, or another agency that you might be representing for attendance purposes. Just to be in alignment with FOIA, the Commonwealth FOIA code requires that anytime 3 or more members of a public body assemble, and with the CAC being a public body, that we make sure that it's carried out in accordance with FOIA. So we'll just make sure that we have minutes for this meeting, and we'll go ahead. I'll turn it over to Mark to call the meeting to order. I will note that per FOIA, since we are in a hybrid setting today and we don't have a majority of physical presence to create a physical quorum here, that it does not, even with our virtual attendees, it does not make a quorum for us today. So no official CAC business can be conducted, which in this situation is actually very helpful for the federal team because we can get right to the presentation at hand. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to our wonderful chair. And just remember to project and speak up so that our virtual friends can hear us.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. I feel as though I came into a program that was already in progress. So I want to take a couple of steps back. First of all, welcome to Hampton Roads, members of the review teams, and welcome to what would have been our bi-monthly meeting of the Community Advisory Committee. We are pleased to be present with you through our electronic proxies, in my case and in the case of others. And we look forward to having a productive relationship that will improve the quality of the work that we're doing locally and move our projects forward in a way that is serving the public of the Hampton Roads region. Thank you.
Ivan, my make a recommendation, so that you can have good conversation with our CAC members. I'd love for you to meet them and sort of be able to start that relationship. Would it be okay if we went around and then for the CAC members, they might not know everybody in the room. That'd be okay, because I think it sets the tone for the type of conversation.
Absolutely, that'd be great. And as you introduce yourself, please let us know what jurisdiction you represent.
Absolutely. And maybe we
Which
can
you reside, so
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So maybe we can start with our friends who, I think get the award from maybe not the furthest travel, but the furthest participation. But would you all mind doing a quick intro for the team, please?
I think that's quite appropriate and conducive to creating a team atmosphere here. So I am Mark Gadulda-Gutrovsky. I reside in the great city of Portsmouth, Virginia, and I have been the chair for a little over 2 years. I am currently on vacation in Sweden. It's a trip that my wife and I take annually, but the importance of what is going on today made me put my hand up to be present at this meeting.
Who wants to go next? Brenda? Alcina?
I'll go next, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Delcino Miles. I'm on the CAC representing the city of Virginia Beach. I'm actually returning to the CAC, which was formerly the CTAC, when our focus was transportation, but we broadened our focus a bit. So happy to be here and listen and contribute where I can. Thank you.
My name is Brenda Johnson. I am a former member of the CAC. This is the first time I participated in a quadrennial review, and I just was very interested. I've been interested in transportation issues since I came to the region in 2014. I just look forward to hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Gary?
Yes, hi, afternoon. I'm getting echo here. Okay. Hi, afternoon, Gary Harris. I'm Managing Director, Center for Sustainable Communities. I'm a member of the CSC for about 4 years, representing Portsmouth.
Lord, I'm sorry. Why don't we start with Anthony? I've got to
Anthony Piglasky, representative from Suffolk. Been a CAC member for 2 or 3 years now at this point. Excited to be here and contribute where I can.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon D. Anderson and representing the city of Portsmouth.
It might be helpful for our VDOT partners as well, for our CAC members to meet, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. I'm Dinah Oliver, Programming Director, Hampton Roads District.
Good afternoon. I'm Keisha Wilkins, planner with the Hampton Roads VDOT.
Good afternoon, Angela A. Fonponsa, Act 10 District Planner and Assistant District Planner, VDOT Hampton Roads.
I'm Marcia Fio with Virginia Department of Transportation and the Central Office of Transportation Mobility Planning Division.
I'm Frank Katrupi, Newport News, about 2 years on the committee.
Brad, would you mind?
Good afternoon. I'm Brad Martin. I am with the CAC and HRTAC representing Virginia Beach. I'm a civil engineer, but not a transportation engineer.
I'm Carolyn Tanner. I'm with the Civil Rights Division at VDOT.
Queen Crittenden, Hampton Roads District Civil Rights Manager.
Terry, welcome back.
Okay. I couldn't tell when I was supposed to go. I'm Terry Danaher, and hey Mark, I was chair of the CAC before it took on the PDC as well as the TPO. So I consider myself the grandmother here, and I've watched it grow and change, and it's been great. So I was invited to come back and give my 2 cents if I had any to give, and I'd be happy to do so. And this is not the first time I have been in a meeting with Mark when he was in Sweden. So I used to be in Portsmouth and we were neighbors, so we had, committees together. Anyway, go ahead.
Lauren Roberts-Carter, I serve on the CAC. I represent Norfolk. I live, work, and play in Norfolk. And I'm the Vice President of Marketing Communications at the Hampton Roads Chamber.
Thank you, everyone. Does the chair have to turn the floor to us, or how does that work? I'm sorry. Or is there someone else? Oh, we got folks around the perimeter here. Got those? Okay, so what is?
So Mark, I do think you need to technically call the meeting to order and then just officially note that, we can move through items 2 through 4 so that item number 5 can begin.
Thank you. So on a personal note, I'm very pleased that Ms. Danaher, my predecessor, accepted our invitation to be here. She was enjoying a life of leisure and luxury up until this point. So it's good to be able to pry her away from that. So, Mr. McLaren, I do not have an agenda in front of me because my little screen on my portable does not have the four sectors that my home desktop does. So if you would step me through where we need to be, and in fact, if you would operate as my proxy, since you are physically in the room, if I have any concerns about where we are going, I will raise my hand and say, hey, wait a minute. But without objection from the other members of the CAC, I would like to proceed in that fashion.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Is there any objection?
No.
Okay, so hearing none, I'm turning the gavel over to you.
All right, so I'll go ahead and call us to order. Since we don't have a quorum, item number 2, approval modification of the agenda. I'll just ask in general, are there any comments or feedback about the current agenda or any modifications requested? Okay, and hearing none, I'll move on to item number 3, whether or not there were any submitted public comments for the CAC during this time. I've not received any written comments or received any comments otherwise regarding the CAC. I'll move on to item number 4, summary minutes. Again, since we don't have a quorum, we can go ahead and move past item number 4 as we will not be able to approve any minutes. And we can now turn it over to item number 5, the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration Certification Compliance Review of the Hampton Roads Metropolitan Area's Transportation Planning and Programming Process, led by Ivan Rucker from Federal Highway and Chelsea Betas from FTA.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So now we are now entering the statutorily required public engagement initiative or responsibility of Federal Highway and Federal Transit. Talk a little bit about CACs not being required. But when we go into a certification review or compliance review, and we notice that a TMA, a large MPO, has established a citizen or community advisory committee, or public advisory committee. We take that as the MPO means business in terms of engaging with the communities that we represent. Meaning the MPO goes beyond the traditional public outreach that's provided by staff, but adds another significant layer, and that is an advisory board consisting of members like yourself. So I'm going to jump right into, and I'm going to try to follow the order here, into the questions. And the first question that we have, and this is coming right out of federal regulations, but we're applying it to the activities of the CAC. And so the first question is, does this committee, Citizen Advisory Committee, have a defined or documented process and or procedures for proactively seeking out and considering the needs of those that have been traditionally underserved by existing transportation systems, such as low-income and minority households? And if you do have a defined, documented process and or procedures, can you speak to them? If you don't, let us know, or let us know if you're aware. Anyone from the CAC can respond. Yes, no, maybe. I don't know.
I would say that although we hadn't when this been a couple of years since I left, hadn't created a document. We work with, in this case, Quan, because he has been at it for a year and a half now. And from what I can tell, I was looking at the site and looking at the reports that you mentioned, he's done a wonderful job. And there's an awful lot of outreach that goes on that we take advantage of when we're giving our advice, because I am sure everybody on this committee reads all this stuff and brings it to the table, as well as talking to neighbors, sometimes going to city council meetings and making announcements there, having conversations with people in our planning and transportation departments in the city, that sort of thing. So they hear things from people naturally, because people call up and complain all the time. So we hear some of the stuff from them as well as collecting it ourselves. So that was what we did. And then we had also an advisor at the time, a different person, but she would keep us kind of on track with what was going on in the outreach. And she came out to my Civic League once, for instance, to talk to an array of people. So there's this interaction between our people on this committee and the staff, as well as our own city staff, things like that.
Thank you for that comment. Is that, again, we're talking about engaging underserved communities, and in terms of procedures and processes and documentation, are you aware of any procedures that the board may be aware of, or that the board is?
Are you referring to the CAC as the board?
I'm trying to see the CAC that has been encouraged or shared with the board.
I haven't been on for a couple of years, so I don't have anything recent.
Okay. Yes. Oh, yes. Please go ahead, Mark.
So I'm not aware of a physical document that speaks to this particular point. Our charge, as I understood it when I came on board, was to act as a conduit for information from my community. This precedes my assuming the chair. Act as a conduit from my community and to the community from the regional boards. But in terms of actually having received a piece of paper or an electronic communication stating that this was required of us beyond the bylaws language, that states what our purpose is. I've not seen one.
So Mark, if you don't mind me asking, so the bylaws are your guiding document in terms of engaging with the communities or the communities within the jurisdiction that you represent, saying that the bylaws are the guiding document.
Yes, sir, the bylaws, but there was also, we've also discussed within our proceedings our role as two-way communications facilitators. That doesn't replace the document, but
Right. No, I understand.
there is that sense that this is what we are supposed to be doing.
Understood, not necessarily documented.
We've also been invited to Title VI information sessions. So there are publications there, and that is a good source of information for those of us who could attend.
I'd like to just add a couple things. Yeah, I'm not aware of a document, but however, I know this is an opportunity to perhaps equip and mobilize the members of the CAC more effectively to really leverage the contacts and resources that we have among our members. So whether that having us go to Civic League, for me, Virginia Beach, go to Civic League meetings or brief council or those kinds of things, staff does a phenomenal job. But I think that the CAC can be somewhat underutilized because they do so much work. But we're here too, not just to go to meetings and hear reports, but also I'd like us to be more of an extension of what staff does in terms of connecting to the community. In your case, in the case of your question, the underutilized, underserved communities and environmental justice issues and things like that. And that's a space that I'm in now on the various projects that I do. I do community engagement and outreach for clients. So I think this is a great opportunity to strengthen our partnership with staff to equip the CAC members to do just that, to engage, to mobilize, and to have the right message points when we go out to these various community meetings and within our own networks. So I think this is a great opportunity to do just that.
Yeah. Yeah, quickly here. We're getting an echo here. Yeah, quickly here now. Gary Harris, to answer your question, no, there is not a formal procedure that has been signed off by CAC members, and they have been trained on to ensure that planning information is transferred in a due process manner to underserved communities. Now, does that occur outside of a procedural framework? Yes, it does. And does it occur in a consistent manner? Well, yes and no. Could it be built upon such that we do have a formalized process and folks are trained and we're doing it to the best extent possible? Yes, that is definitely a success pathway and such. But I truly believe that we have embraced the essence and the mission of the CSC when it comes to engaging our communities, and we do that and such, and we do that to the best of our extent, whether it be focus groups or tabletop sessions or social media, etc. That information is consistently passed on, but it is not proceduralized.
Thank you. I think I'll move. Any comments? First question. I appreciate the comment. Let me say I appreciate the comment regarding Title VI. Certainly, there's a strong connection between public involvement, public engagement, and the various non-discrimination statutes. Matter of fact, public engagement, public participation is actually ingrained in those non-discrimination statutes. So I appreciate the fact that there's interest in training in the area of non-discrimination and perhaps the understanding of how to best apply those federal statutes to the work that you do as I call you public service because you're engaging with the citizens. There's a question here, number 10 is tied to civil rights. We'll talk about Title 6 tomorrow, but I do want to ask the question to the state on it. Considering the fact that we do have a CAC and the public involvement as part of it. Were they interviewed as part of that civil rights review conducted by the state? I don't.
No,
Okay.
they weren't interviewed as part of that process.
Okay.
Just through the assessment of the PVP, the public participation plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. We're going to move forward with our next question. And this question deals with this regional transit advisory panel that we noticed on the MPO's website as part of our desk office. And we noticed as far as the RTAP membership, that members of this board are also on that panel, that advisory panel. So the question is, with CAC also being members of RTAP and obviously members of the MPO, can you describe the role and the process for ensuring that the advice and the recommendations from RTAP are communicated broadly to the Hampton Roads citizens and directly to the HRTPO?
I would say that from the standpoint of communication to the citizens, I'm not sure that is there, but certainly the communication to the HRTPO coming from the CAC to the members of the CAC that are on that TAC is pretty seamless. I mean, when you look at the smart scale funding that Virginia has adopted and all of the programs and plans that the CAC and the HRTAC and all these different groups talk about, whether it's do we need sheltered bus stops at all the places along the routes, or what are we going to do to make the Birth of America Trail multimodal and multifunctional and have a lot of stops along the way. What you're talking about in the communication to serving the underserved communities, I think, is part and parcel of what we do, and the fact that CAC members are also seated on those other committees is really a seamless communication to the higher ups at the TPO, to our local city councils and planning commissions, that I think is what you're after.
So, let me dive a little bit deeper, if you don't mind me asking the question. Sure. I think are you a member of the RTAP?
I'm Brad Martin. I'm on the CAC
and RTAP
and on the
RTAP. I noticed that there are organizations, civil rights organizations that are also, I believe, members of RTAP. We talked a little bit earlier about the needs of those that have been traditionally underserved, underrepresented, low-income and minority households, in which many of these civil rights organizations represent. Do you recall, or can you share a little bit with us about what their concerns were as members of RTAP with respect to regional transit and meeting the needs of underserved populations? What did you take away from that as a member of the CAC? And then how have you communicated to the board here, CAC board, and then provided that feedback to the HRTPO?
I think that touches on something that I said about the sheltering of bus stops. And I think our focus was certainly on not only the underserved communities, but also a comparison of where there might be something right across the street from a hospital in a higher income community that got better treatment than some other stops along the way. So I don't know if you're asking, were the civil rights organizations appropriately involved in that? I would say certainly.
That and more broadly, how is the members of the CAC absorbing the recommendations that come from the Regional Transportation Advisory Panel.
I have to hand it
And
to our
so-
staff who are, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. I'm kind of sort of making sure everyone's on the same page. We're all in agreement that, that's happening.
The fact that the staff of the HRTPO and the HRPDC, Bob and Juan, are consistent throughout many of these committees and commissions is really representative, and the job that they do is first rate to connect all these different threads together.
Okay.
Yes, please speak up. Ms. Brenda, yes.
I was one of the original members of RTAP. I'm a former member of CAC. I actually had a lot of concerns about RTAP engaging with the first problem that I have is that when we're talking about stakeholders tend to be in this community business people, business organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, etc. Stakeholders do not seem to be the people who need the services, the people who use the services. There seems to be a courting of quote unquote choice riders. The one thing that the coronavirus epidemic certainly pointed out to us is how much we need those people who are on the lower end of the economic scale, because the rest of us were sheltered in our homes and they were trying to get back and forth to work to provide the absolutely necessary things that we needed. And I don't feel that this advisory panel is that interested in looking at them. The RTAP to me seemed to be less a process for examining and advising the regional transportation process. In other words, the needs of the community and those who already use it, and more of a booster club, as you might say, for a single project, which is 757 Express. For example, during the time that we were meeting, there was a discussion about the fleet, introducing electric buses, for example. It was after the legislation had passed establishing this organization, and before our first meeting, there was already a meeting of organizations or the people who handled the money, the 6 mayors, and I can't remember the exact team. But anyway, they made a decision without us. It wasn't even part of the discussion. RTAP has focused on, yes, on the shelters and that sort of thing. There has been absolutely no discussion on the fleet, what it looks like, what kinds of things need to be improved, what kind of air quality needs to be involved, what about should routes be improved to better handle to get the people from where they live to where the buses are and where it travels. There is more an interest of developing this spine, the 757 Express, and then move everything to it, including housing. That to me recreates many of the problems that you have with gentrification and so forth, which both Virginia Beach and Richmond have been nationally recognized as having a problem. Another example is when Norfolk had major problems with the way they were going to be routing their transportation or their bus service right through an underserved community instead of stopping in it. It was such a major issue that it stopped Norfolk's city council process, and they had to change that process. When I brought it up in the RTAP meeting, and I explained that and asked how we were going to address that, the answer that I got was that had nothing to do with 757 Express. That to me is very concerning. But that's just a truncated view. I've given more of my concerns, but those are just some of the concerns that I have about RTAP. And I will also say that as an RTAP member, I had no contact with CAC during that process.
Thank you very much. Any more comments on this particular?
Hello, this is Travis Davidson. I'm calling in. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm a CAC member, and I agree completely with the statements held by the previous spokesperson. I was on the Norfolk Multimodal Transportation Committee, and at that time, Norfolk had no one on the CAC. It took a significant amount of time to get the city manager to appoint some members from Norfolk on the CAC. We hadn't had anyone on it for several years, I believe. So since I've been on it, about 6 months, most of our there was no process to explain to me a role or responsibility or how I was to function within the CAC or within, at all. There's no intake process for new members. And also, the meetings have been informational. Like, we're doing this and you guys can learn about it. We're doing this and you guys can learn about it. We haven't had meetings that really solicit, to a significant extent, our opinions. We've had some meetings along those lines, but I haven't seen those opinions taken to any other body and explained to them formally, this is how the CAC feels about something. So I think there's a lot we can do to improve our CAC, and I hope this process will do that for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. If you don't mind, sir, we'd like to capture your comments in written form. If there's a way you can email statements that you comments that you just shared with us, we'd appreciate it. We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, I will make an effort to do so. I'm glad. I don't feel that it's necessarily. I'm not blaming any particular element. I want to be clear about that.
Right.
I just think it's a structural issue within our region and our cities that sometimes they're motivated not to listen to citizens. Sometimes it's even for good reasons potentially, because it just slows things down. They feel like. But there's an important process. There's an important reason that they need to listen to us, and so I personally don't feel like our community in Norfolk definitely even understands what the CAC is or has a role. We've never had a citizen other than myself over the years come and talk to this group about anything. So most people don't know it exists or don't see it as a effective group, which is a challenge.
Yeah, I did want to say, one of the things that Mark does now and that I used to do and that before me, my predecessors, we go to the HRTPO meetings, we go to the PDC meetings every time they meet. And at that point, what I used to do, and I'm assuming this is what happens, is give a brief report about what was covered during the CAC meeting. So if there are strong feelings about something, and the RTAP is a little bit after my time, so, but I'm delighted to see that something exists, but I would like to see Brenda's concerns met, because for me, I'm from Portsmouth, and we have a very large community there that depends on public transit, and it is a big issue, and it's always been a big issue. And Mark is certainly aware of that because he takes public transit. And I know Brenda, you're in Newport News? Yeah. So that her journeys here for meetings were quite the adventure because there was no service that was direct and she had to keep going different places. It was like $65 to come to a meeting. So that if there is a big impact on various communities and for anybody who is dependent upon public service, doesn't drive, doesn't have a car, whatever. So I did want to make sure that people do get the understanding that the chair of the CAC does go and report up the ladder there, and that they do have information, and we do have concerns that we describe. And I know that in my own case, the task force for the Elizabeth River crossing, that was something that came up because it was a concern. Well, it was certainly a concern of mine, but it was a concern for the region because of the impact it had on people moving and getting about who didn't have the wherewithal to do so. So there is some communication. It just isn't necessarily apparent to everybody. It does happen.
Thank you. Appreciate the discussion. Sharon? Yes, yes. Any more comments on this particular item?
Mr. Harris is an RTAP member. I didn't know if he wanted.
Morgan.
Mark?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Mark.
Am I the next speaker?
Yes.
So, Mr. Rucker, in
Yes.
the way you phrased the question, I was wondering if you're under the impression that CAC members are automatically members of RTAP.
Not at all. My understanding is that RTAP, and we inquired about RTAP earlier on as to whether or not this regional transportation advisory panel was structured in a way to provide advice and recommendations. Coming from these, it looked like it's primarily made up of business organizations. It's not, well, I'll have Bob elaborate on that. But whether or not the advice and recommendations, there was a structured way to solicit advice and recommendations and to share that with the MPO, considering the fact that it is an advisory committee of the MPO. And my understanding is that that advisory committee is chaired by the executive director of the PDC and the MPO. And you, or shall I say, members of the CAC are part of the membership list of that organization, of that advisory panel.
And so the membership of the RTAP is very diverse and cross-cutting across the entire region. It does include the business community, but it also includes advocacy groups for underserved communities. It includes higher education. Includes, per the Code of Virginia, major shopping destinations, other activity centers, the military. Thank you, Brad. From Habitat to Humanity to organizations structured to really assist many of our vulnerable communities. It is structured to cover that full representation from across the community. And then, Ivan, as you correctly said, the CAC has 2 seats on that panel.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate you clarifying that. And that is the membership structure that I believe is codified in the state code. It's captured in the state code. Okay, so it's broader than business. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Mark.
So to follow up, based on the discussion that has occurred thus far about the RTAP, the RTAP connection, I think that we on the CAC should probably be receiving periodic reports from our representatives on RTAP, which has not been a formal part of our meeting agendas. Ms. Johnson's concerns are troubling, not because she's voiced them, but because that's not something that I see as being productive in terms of the CAC's mission. And so if we actually have seats on RTAP, which I wasn't I wasn't aware that it was formalized in that fashion, then we should be receiving regular input and be returning our views to them by means of our de facto liaisons.
Mark, if you don't mind, I want to dive a little bit deeper into just the comments that I heard. So in terms of RTAP, Regional Transportation Advisory Panel, for the representatives of each jurisdiction sitting around this table, are you able to identify what concerns, positive or negative, that are coming from RTAP that affect your jurisdiction from RTAP? Meaning from Portsmouth standpoint, these are what we're hearing from RTAP. This is the position of RTAP. From Norfolk's, with respect to Norfolk, these are the priorities that RTAP is discussing. Right? So Suffolk, these are the priorities. Are you able to assess that?
I wouldn't know, I'm not current, but what Mark is saying is that it can be made so.
Okay.
So
Okay,
that's the important thing, is that that's not a big deal. We get stuff from other liaisons too.
Thank you. Yes, Bob.
May I add something, and I encourage the conversation to keep going. A little bit of background, though, in the world of unfunded mandates.
You know about that.
It's important to remember that at 11 o'clock the night at the end of the Virginia General Assembly, when the transit fund was approved, and the MPO was directed by Virginia Code to establish RTAP. No funding came with that. So why I say that is I am incredibly proud of RTAP's work. By virtue of having the equivalent of a part-time staff person, RTAP by its very nature is higher level.
Okay.
And I would agree with Ms. Danaher, really, they're not drilling down, and it would be difficult for the CAC. And Ms. Johnson, to your point, in terms of some of these local issues, they're not getting down to that. Now, do we need to? We do, right? But by the way RTAP is resourced or not, I just wanted to mention that. Funding didn't come with it to do that.
Thank you. Great discussion.
But I know Mr. Harris is an RTAP member too, and I know he has his hand up.
Mr. Harris, yes.
Yes, quickly here. I just happen to hold the distinct pleasure of serving on both the RTAP and the CAC. And currently, there is not an intentional extraction of findings or information from the RTAC to the CSC on a regular and consistent basis. It occurs as a matter of discussion, but not procedurally or in a deliberate manner. Secondly, as a member of RTAP and also as a member of one of those civil rights organizations that she talked about, we do, during those RTAP discussions, we deliberately and intentionally and frequently and routinely made sure that the discussion focused on underserved communities, make sure the discussion focused on environmental justice issues, both actual and potential, and also we introduced the concept of cumulative impacts as well. So that was taken into consideration with RTAP. The next question was, do CSC members take RTAP recommendations and turn them into action? Well, yes, we do. Example, our organization took a recommendation from RTAP in a tangential manner, and got with the Georgia Institute of Technology and got with a large software development firm out of New York, and we actually developed an app which will help underserved individuals to get to essential critical functions in terms of jobs, in terms of healthcare, et cetera, during climate conditions and such. It's called TREC. So again, that came to tangentially out of RTAP. We kind of morphed it and shaped it into something now that can be used by underserved communities to ensure that their that those essential functions are adequately staffed during, during climate conditions.
Wonderful, thank you. Continue forward with question number 3. I think this is the last question related to underserved communities. Ask the question whether CAC has a process for engaging organizations. Talk about the urban league women voters, I believe. For example, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, talking about LEP populations that represent underserved communities in the Hampton Roads region. For example, have you requested invitations or sent out an invitation to any of the organizations representing underserved communities to come and visit with you, to talk to you about transportation-related issues and concerns that they may be seeing locally and or regionally? Could you all hear that question? Okay. You all feel empowered that you can do that as a community advisory committee?
The chair typically works with the staff to create the agenda. So it's a simple, I would think, Mark, would you agree? It's a simple matter to work with the staff and say, okay, we need to know which groups would cover the most territory for us and see what we can pull together as an agenda.
Mark, did you want to say anything?
Yes. In fact, our staff liaison has brought a couple of items to us in recent times. One was an organization, a family organization involved with reducing gun violence in underserved communities, and also response to outreach from an activist in the Richmond area relative to some high-speed rail projects that would impact a historically African American burial area. And although that latter piece is not within our region, the efforts that we are making in this region relative to high-speed rail does feed into concerns about what is happening to that historic burial ground. So we are receiving briefings and are dealing with agenda items specifically related to issues within underserved communities on a periodic basis. Certain issues like affordable housing that have been discussed in the parent bodies, the TPO and the PDC, we have received briefings on those. And that's a sampling. Definitely my recollection is not exhaustive, but these are the kinds of things that do cross our desks as we meet together.
One of the items, and Quan can add on to this, but the chair is referring to is one of the things that we've been asked to do here is convene conversations among our mayors about what we can collectively do to address the terrible crime and violence that we're seeing in this region and also elsewhere. As part of that group, we've really brought in a large number of stakeholders. One of the groups we really wanted to talk to were the violence interruption programs that are happening at the grassroots areas within our communities. And when we brought them in, and Juan and I were just so impressed with the work they were doing, Juan pivoted to invite people leading those programs to the CAC. Well, I don't know if you wanted to add to that at all.
The group was named Catch More Kids. We actually invited a couple of other groups as well to join who were deemed as violence interrupters for the Hampton Roads region. Many of them have their own experiences within Hampton Roads and specifically maybe with within encountering violent situations or being around those sorts of circumstances. So they were able to bring a unique perspective that was more connected with the actual issues that these communities are facing, what intervention methods they felt were most effective, how they could best be supported. They connected with some of our CAC members in different localities who thought that they may be able to connect them to additional resources, get them in front of additional people to get them what they needed in order to be more effective in their work to reduce violence within the Hampton Roads region, which affects us all.
So, Mr. McLaurin, would you say a little bit about the activism around the Shaco Hill burial ground as well?
Absolutely. So back in July of 2023, a report improving passenger rail by Dr. Case, actually here in the room, was brought before TTAC. It was put up for public comment. In October, it was approved by the TPO board. At the end of October, we received comment from Ms. Lenora McQueen. She actually has a really, I mean, just inspiring isn't the word, but she has a really big story. She was searching for genealogical records for her family, and she actually lives in Texas. But she found that her ancestors were interred in Richmond at what came to be Shaco Hill African Burying Ground. Over the years, different development projects, such as including I-64 and other development projects, have completely disrupted that space of over 20,000 interred, freed, and enslaved African Americans. It wasn't until her efforts that there was even a historical marker put there. Other burial grounds that were near there were not disrupted, but that one was. So when she brought those concerns to us about our report on improving passenger rail and the connections to Richmond and potential additional impacts to Shaco Hill African Burying Ground, we made sure to take those concerns seriously. Dr. Case had already mentioned within his report that VPRA had noticed the site there and expressed concerns about it and said that they would not move forward with it. But after meeting with her and her colleagues, we did expand the report to include a more in-depth discussion about the impacts of development, transportation planning on these historical sites. And I won't get into it because we all know the historical impacts of planning within our nation, but based on those connections and feedback, we were able to bring that information to the CAC. Ms. Lenora McQueen directly communicated with CAC members and emailed them. Additionally, the report was taken back to the board to be approved with the added on information about Shaco Hill African Burying Ground. And that was a situation, and I guess I should also mention this because I want to make it clear. We did collaborate with the appropriate agencies who plan in that area, including DRPT, VPRA, Plan RVA, the City of Richmond, and VDOT.
I do remember you mentioned that. Thank you.
I think Gary has
Yes, sir.
raised earlier.
Yeah, quick here, just a comment again about CSC and interaction with partnerships and networks, et cetera.
Yes.
How I could forget this, in that I mentioned the fact that coming out of the RTAP, the recommendation where we built the TREC app, again, Transit Resilient Essential Commuting app, we actually partnered with the FDA to build that app. Your data scientists and such were part of our team and such, Mr. David Snyder and such, and so us and the Two Sigma out of New York and the FDA again built this app to ensure that our underserved communities and particularly our residents who are impacted by climate can get to those critical essential functions, during those severe weather events. So again, it was a partnership between us, Two Sigma, and the FDA coming up with this solution.
Can you share that? Thank you.
So we do have examples, but in regard to the process aspect of the question, I would say we could do some more work there. Our staff liaison, although a very quick study and a very capable individual, has really been inundated with learning all the parts and pieces, not only of his liaison responsibilities with the CAC, but within the parent organizations as well. I think now that he's nearing a plateau, we may be able to put more time and effort into developing a process.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Let's see. I think we heard some examples. The next question is, please describe situations where public involvement has had an impact on the planning decision-making process. We heard some examples. Are there any other examples, especially coming from this board, where your involvement has had an impact on the decision-making process or decisions of FPO, policy board?
I remember when I was on the CAC that there was a discussion about the bike trails that stretched from Richmond down to the Hampton Roads area. My impression was that was originally a citizen-led initiative, and it is now being enjoyed by thousands of residents on a regular basis. That's one that's very, very clear. And then I was also involved with the HRBT process, where they had massive public involvement conversations, engaging with the community and making the decision about that. The one regrettable part is that just the CAC was about to provide its input. They made a decision without our input, but we were very involved from the beginning to end, got all the reports and that sort of thing. That was excellent.
Thank you very much.
I apologize for interrupting, may I? And I have to take this. My apologies.
Wow.
We always have CAC, we always keep everybody guessing, right? But I do have to say this. The CAC, led by Ms. Danaher, was one of the first voices in this region to say, we've got to do something about the downtown and midtown towns. Elizabeth River Crossing tolling. Ms. Danaher at that point was a strong advocate, a leader here at the CAC, and we went to the HRTPO board. And the HRTPO board formed a ERC task force, which Ms. Danaher, that I staffed, Ms. Danaher joined us with the key mayors from the region. And we went on a journey meeting with VDOT, meeting with a private operator. Now keep in mind, this agreement, the toll agreement, was with a private concessionaire in a Commonwealth of Virginia. We had no standing, but we stayed after it, and we stayed after it. The first thing that happened was 3 years ago, the toll operator agreed to a low-income toll assistance relief program of about $37 million that will last out to 2036. And then this past General Assembly session, led by Senator Louise Lucas, $101 million was approved in the biennial budget for additional toll relief. Now that anybody making less than $60,000 a year can ride through that tunnel 14 times a week with no toll at all. Terry, you started that movement. And I just say that's the way I think the fingerprints of CAC start things and get them rolling and they plant seeds. And
It takes time.
It takes time, but while we have Ms. Danaher here, I did want to give her that credit because she started that effort.
That's awesome. And I think that's a wonderful example. So I thank you, and I thank members of the Hampton Roads Contingency for the General Assembly finding much needed relief for certain members of that region, as well as jurisdiction that have been, most would say, disproportionately impacted. I know when we conducted public meetings in 2012, it was your staff, Bob, that gave us over 1,700 comments that spoke to citizens of this region and their concerns with tolling. And this was in addition to them knowing the mitigation that was planned. And in reading those 1,700 comments, you certainly could see the concerns of how those tolls will be impacting the livelihoods of certain segments of your population, as well as certain jurisdictions. We asked your staff whether or not this was an environmental justice matter. The staff felt as though it was an EJ issue because they felt as though, again, certain members of the community in certain certain jurisdictions were being disproportionately impacted. And then we asked the question whether or not the MPO board received any civil rights complaints. Where there is an environmental justice matter, you don't bring it under environmental justice, you bring a complaint under any one of the civil rights statutes, for example, Title VI. He said they hadn't received any. But the questions, and we'll talk about long-range transportation plan, for the MPO in 2012 staff just to sense in the field that those tolls were an environmental justice issue. And here we are in 2024, where you have members of the General Assembly felt as though the tolls were so disproportionately impact certain communities and jurisdictions that they had to act. In between that, so my question is in terms of staff. Understanding that staff had environmental justice concerns with respect to that project, how was, and I know it's kind of sort of deviant, but how was staff's concerns about environmental justice articulated in planning documents. And we don't have to talk about that now, but we can just talk about that tomorrow. But obviously, certainly there's a realization that something was going on with respect to environmental justice or disproportionate impacts for the General Assembly, right, to act on additional mitigation efforts. And we can talk about that tomorrow as part of the.
I really appreciate doing that because
If we have a hand raised for TD, and I think that is.
Thank you. Any additional comments, questions, comments online or in the room?
Yes, hello,
Yes.
this is Travis Davidson again. I have a brief comment to clarify. I believe that what makes the CAC less effective than we could be is we are not formally, structurally involved in planning and decision-making processes before they occur. I haven't seen it happen formally. There's informal, and Bob Crum does a great job of taking those informal comments, I believe, forward. It's definitely not a criticism of the staff there, but more of a structural kind of system-wide issue that within our cities they kind of do what they're doing, and our involvement hasn't been formalized in a way that I think would be very helpful. Maybe it's the CAC's responsibility to push for that. If the federal government believes that that should be our role, also a report that puts that in. We have no way of affecting budgets or future planning cycles that's formal, that I'm aware of or have seen. So if you're not affecting the budget and you're not affecting the schedule and you're not affecting approvals, you're not affecting anything really officially. So I've been a project manager my whole life, so I understand within the cities, they feel like they have a schedule to meet and a budget they don't want to overrun. And the more and more groups they have to engage, the more it costs them time and money. But we have an important role. So if we truly have an important role, we need to do more. But I'll leave it at that.
And I would like to second that comment from Mr. Davidson. There are some discussions right now occurring in the TPO that I feel will take on a life of their own. They have to do with the possibility of increasing our sales tax differential to a full penny to address unmet maintenance needs on existing roads, boldly going where no regional body has gone before. And I think that it would be easy for that discussion to get out ahead of the public. I'm being a little facetious here. I'm taking a right turn. I'm being a little facetious here when I say that tolling is probably one of the great unifying issues within our region, because regardless of socioeconomic status, nobody likes tolls. Historically, we have done a lot of paying our own way, from the original Midtown and Downtown tunnels to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, and for the earliest part of its history, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. And that's something that most of the rest of Virginia has not seen. It's one of those gotchas, because the funding formulas for dealing with large projects and the needs for them have not been spread equally across the Commonwealth. The resources in some parts of Virginia are extremely lacking, and we'd have no roads if it weren't for the for the fact that the Commonwealth has tried to shore up the economically underperforming parts of Virginia. So what that has translated into for people in Hampton Roads, for the people in Hampton Roads is we've paid more than what we think is our fair share in terms of improvements. Now, getting back to the point of the question, I think that the General Assembly, because of the toll aversion here, came up with a good compromise for some of our bigger projects, and that was the building of hot lanes, so that they formalized in the law an approach driven by the complaints of the related to the expansion of the downtown and midtown tunnels. Whereby if you're going to build new lanes, you can toll if you have free lanes available. So with our HOT lanes that have started to appear across the region, you do have that sort of a regime. And you can avoid paying tolls on those hot lane projects by increasing the per vehicle occupancy. Most of ours are HOT2. Now, that doesn't mean all complaints have been eliminated, but definitely in the making of policy and the structuring of projects, there has been a recognition of the prevailing sentiment. So public opinion has been reflected in the final structure of the projects.
I just wanted to add on. I know there are comments about the local budgets and some of the topics that come up. The one thing I do need to point out is our role as the TPO, we do not get involved in local budgets. Unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, it's the role that we play. We are more of the regional organization. So for us to get into Norfolk or Portsmouth or Suffolk to say, hey, this is in your budget, it's not something that we can do. And as per federal regulation, it's not something we should do. So I just wanted to put it out there and clarify. That's a very valid comment, but that's also some of the way the localities are the ones where these discussions happen, regional discussions happen at our board. So I just wanted to clarify that in case there's, thank you.
There is also the aspect of the contract that was signed with the tunnels that says that certain things have to be told. Otherwise, there's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So that is also part of the programming there, and it's very frustrating.
Is that the primary driver?
If something is built that competes with the tolled road from the private company, we have to pay. So we're forced into a tolling situation.
Those compensation events include any expansion of the HRBT. I'll pause there a second. Yes, we are expanding the HRBT. So the courts will determine that if necessary. And any free expansion to capacity at places like the high-rise bridge, et cetera. Those are all part of the original agreement signed back in 2011.
Ever. Like 50 or 60 years.
And that's why I know we'll talk about this tomorrow, but that's why we have been so involved in just advocating for toll relief and mitigation. And frankly, we've even got as aggressive a look at, it costs $2.3 billion to buy it out. We know that number because we were looking at every option or have looked at every option possible.
We'll move right along. I'm looking at some of these questions. I think that's been answered. Let's ask, go to number 9. If I can bounce back. How has the CAC changed since the last compliance review 4 years ago? How has it changed?
They took on the BDC, that's.
So, I looked at that, it said, see, there's a caveat in your bylaws. It says if the bylaws of the HRTPO or the PDC, if take precedence, if it does not specifically mention the CAC, there's a caveat right above in your bylaws.
The big boards have the decision-making power.
Right, so.
The mayors and chairs.
Right, so you are this CAC or the MPO, which includes CAC. I believe your bylaws were updated in 2020, but the HRPDC updated its bylaws 2022. 2 years after, you updated your bylaws to include the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. Planning District Commission updated its bylaws, but there's no reference to CAC in their update of their bylaws. So I just found that interesting.
Well, they blew that.
But I just found that interesting. So that's why we took a look at the HRPDC bylaws and didn't see reference to.
Well, I left.
But I'm not saying that you aren't, but I guess they can.
I left in January of 22. So I wasn't here to look at it.
Text staff and ask them for our last bylaws. Check on that. The one thing I do want to say, Juan's been working, President Quan, you want to talk about your efforts to update the CAC bylaws?
Absolutely. So in January of June of 2023, the CAC had a work session where members came together. We had boards together, like the boards that you write on, not boards that convene, and shared what CAC members wanted to get more out of the CAC, how they would like to drive issues more or the agenda, or creating that bi-directional relationship between the CAC and communities. From that discussion, a subcommittee was established to look at the bylaws and to reevaluate them. We've met periodically since then, and as of a few months ago, sorry, Mark, I can't remember the exact month, but we've actually brought the amended or proposed amended bylaws to the CAC body, asking for adoption. One of the hangups that we've met is, as you saw today, with FOIA requirements for the Commonwealth, it can sometimes be difficult to get a quorum in person or by hybrid means. But in those updated bylaws, it does reference specifically engaging with community-based organizations, with underserved communities, making sure that they're connected with the CAC, and really engaging members of the public in what the CAC is doing. It also says that it'll follow the FOIA updates of the board, and that's for 2 reasons. The FOIA Advisory Council has informed us that regardless of if we say that or not, as far as they're concerned, the parent body rules related at least to FOIA and that operation, which affects a lot of our proceedings, supersede any subcommittees or advisory bodies. But also it prevents us from having to go make an administrative update to the bylaws each time that FOIA is updated, as it was this past July.
Appreciate that update. So let me ask the board. The staff has presented the CAC with recommended changes. What is the CAC's? I'm just curious in terms of the changes that's been recommended by staff. Do they look favorable in the eyes of CAC, or is there additional questions or things that need to be discussed? Just curious. Yes.
chime in. I was part of a subcommittee that we met and talked about some of those changes. I think they're very helpful. I think it helped further my understanding of our purpose of the CAC. So I think I found those to be very beneficial, and I think they were also well distributed to members of the CAC so that we could understand what the changes were as compared to what had been previously put in my life.
Any comments? All right. Thank you, Quan. Thank you. Appreciate it. We have 5 minutes left. I'm going to hit this last one. Because civil rights talked a little bit about the connection or intersection of public involvement and civil rights. You being the community advisory committee of the NPO. And in looking at both recent civil rights reports from the HRTPDC and HRTPO, this group is referenced. And we wanted to know whether or not you all had the opportunity to review those reports and have discussion.
I know Juan has provided them.
Okay.
To say that I fully can understand every single piece of information in that would be limited. But he has certainly provided them to us and made those readily available to members of the CAC.
When were they made available?
I think I got them when I first onboarded, I believe.
They're available to the general public. They're on the website.
Okay.
They can be downloaded by anybody.
Okay.
And I think as soon as we had, there was a couple of us that had a couple questions for Juan, he immediately ran to his office, grabbed us a copy and was like, here you go, there you go.
It's an excellent report, by the way. Yeah. It's really well done.
We're talking about the state's report.
Oh, I was talking about it.
How about VDOT's report?
We're talking about the
Okay, no, VDOT conducted last review of
Okay.
NPO and PDC. Have you read the civil rights report
I was reading.
from VDOT?
No, I haven't seen
We're
it.
talking about two different things.
Yep, sorry.
Okay, no, so that's, okay. If we haven't, because they're referencing that report, make that available to members of the CAC.
As a point of clarification, it was brought to the CAC. It was part of the public summary report, but I'll make sure that it gets redistributed and that we make it a point, like an actual item on the agenda to have open discussion and that it's explained thoroughly.
So can you take us, when you receive reports like that, either from Federal Highway or Federal Transit, take us through the process of making those available to the board at the CAC.
Yeah, so as Terry mentioned, all of our reports are readily available to the public. What we did in that situation, and when receiving the compliance review, we did include it in the public summary report for the CAC, and that's when we go through all the public notices that are available on the website, et cetera, and then we open up the floor for discussion.
So you said you made it available to the CAC board, you report?
Yeah, it was part of the public summary report. It was referenced in there, and it was available.
Was it hot?
Like, are you like hard copy?
No, I meant hot, like you could click on it and.
I think it was linked. I think it was like you gave us the URL.
I can go back to that month and provide that as a follow-up. I don't want to like.
Yeah, no. The only reason why I'm asking on it is because they're saying they haven't seen it. And I asked whether or not they've seen the report, and they said they haven't seen it. That's the reason why I'm asking.
Well, and
that's fine.
Regardless of if it was, provided or not, hearing that the members are saying that they're not familiar with it is enough of a cue for me to know that it should be provided again, have open discussion and conversation, and be placed as an agenda item. So that will occur.
I appreciate this wonderful discussion. There you go. Bob's stomach rumbling, Bob. This was an awesome discussion.
For the CAC members joining us remotely, present and past, thank you so much. For everybody that took the time to come as well, we really, really appreciate it. And Ivan and Chelsea, do you want to state again that they can provide you written comments?
Yes, please feel free. In addition to the comments that we heard today, provide your documented comments to us, either Chelsea or myself, to be included as part of the formal compliance report. Again, thank you so much. Bob, you have fun.
You asked me a really good question earlier, Ivan, and I couldn't respond. So the PDC bylaws changed in 2022. We changed our annual meeting to January. We had to update the FOIA provisions. We made some grammatical changes. So those are the changes in 2022. But if we need to beef those up related to CAC, we would absolutely want to do that.
And I don't see any conflict, but there was just one statement, I got the bylaws of the CEC, it said, in the event of any conflict between these bylaws and those of the HRTPO and HRPDC, the HRTPO and HRPDC bylaws shall prevail. Again, like I said, the CAC bylaws, the CAC is mentioned in the HRTPO. Maybe it doesn't have to be mentioned in the HRPDC. I'll leave that up to you. But in that case, it's not a conflict. But in that case, you know, the HRPDC bylaws prevails, despite the fact that you don't have CAC mentioned in there. Even though this is the CAC of the HRTPO and HRPDC. I'll leave it up to you.
I think the PDC, and I don't want to speak on the PDC, but I think the PDC is kept, it's pretty high level. If you look at the bylaws, Ivan, the TPO gets into a little bit more of the details in terms of the committees. The PDC is much more higher level,
PDC is pretty much based on state code. But there are ways we can always strengthen and cross connect. So thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry to be a stickler for FOIA, just so that we can wrap things up. We'll finish up with item 5. Thank you to the federal team. And our next meeting, item 6, is going to be scheduled for Thursday, October 10th, 2024. Is there any old or new business before we adjourn? All right.